In the far reaches of space where stars shone like tiny diamonds on black velvet, the planet Thalros burned. The Thalrians, a gentle alien species, had lived there for thousands of years in peace. They were artists, thinkers, and dreamers. Their cities were made of glass towers and flowing light, and their gardens floated in the sky. But that peace had ended. The Dravox had arrived. They were a brutal race, strong, fast, and cruel. They destroyed everything they touched. The Thalrians had tried to fight, but they had no weapons strong enough. Their world was crumbling, and their people were scared. In desperation, they turned to an old legend. The legend spoke of humans. According to Thalrian history, humans were called Deathworlders because they came from a harsh planet full of danger. Every human survived because they were clever, strong, and fearless. The Thalrians hoped these humans were real, and they might help them. Elder Viral, the wisest of the Thalrians, stood in the tallest tower of the city of Lumina. The sky above was full of smoke, and the ground below shook from explosions. He raised a small device and sent a signal across the stars. It was not in the language of the Dravox, but in a frequency only intelligent life could understand. Far away on Earth, the signal was picked up by a massive deep space array in Arizona. Commander Alex Carter was reviewing routine scans when he noticed something unusual. The readings were strange, a pattern that repeated not like anything humans had seen before. He adjusted the sensors. The signal became clearer, and a voice, though mechanical, could be heard. "Help us, humans." The message repeated 3 times before fading. Alex blinked. He had heard rumors of alien life, but he never thought he would hear an actual message asking for help. His hands trembled slightly as he called the message to Admiral Lewis. Admiral Lewis was a tall man with gray hair and a sharp gaze. He had seen many wars, but never a signal like this. He listened carefully. "It says, 'Help us, humans?'" he asked. "Yes, sir," Alex replied. "I checked it twice. It is definitely directed at humans. The source is very far from our known space. It is beyond the Orion Belt." Admiral Lewis rubbed his chin. "We have no idea who they are or what kind of threat is waiting there. It could be a trap." Alex shook his head. "I don't think it's a trap, sir. The pattern is different. It is desperate, not threatening." The Admiral nodded slowly. "We cannot ignore it. Send the message to the Council of Worlds. I want their opinion." Within hours, the Council received the message. There was debate. Some Council members argued it was too risky. Sending humans into unknown space could be dangerous. Others believed that humans could help. They remembered the stories. Humans survived where no one else could. They were called Deathworlders for a reason. After long discussion, the decision was made. Humanity would respond. Immediately, the Earth Defense Command began preparing a fleet. Ships were pulled from training docks, engines fueled, and weapons checked. But this was not a normal military operation. They would travel not to conquer, but to rescue. Captain Julia Munro was chosen to lead the mission. She had fought pirates, survived asteroid storms, and commanded a crew under extreme conditions. Her eyes were calm, but her mind raced as she considered the task ahead. "You are not just going to another system," Admiral Lewis told her. "You are going to the unknown. Keep your crew safe, and save whoever is out there." "Yes, sir," Julia replied. She had a small smile, but it did not reach her eyes. She knew this mission could cost lives, but she also knew that humans never turned away from those in need. Lieutenant Ryan Blake, a young pilot, could barely contain his excitement. This was his first mission in deep space. He had trained for years, reading old human stories about courage, about survival, about battles against impossible odds. Now he was going to see it himself. Beside him was Dana Brooks, a mechanic who had lost her brother in a raid many years ago. She was quiet and serious, fixing the engines and checking fuel systems. Saving these aliens was personal. She wanted to prove that humans could protect others even far from home. The fleet gathered in Earth orbit. Ships of all sizes shone in the sunlight. Carriers, frigates, battleships, and fast attack ships. Crews walked along corridors running final drills. The air smelled of metal and fuel. Some people whispered prayers. Some checked their weapons one last time. Some looked out at the stars and thought of home. On the bridge of the flagship, Julia Munro stood tall. Her hands rested lightly on the console as she observed the formation. She spoke to her crew calmly. "Remember, we are not just soldiers. We are protectors. We go because someone out there needs us. That is why we survive. The fleet moved as one, leaving the blue planet behind. Earth shrank into the distance, a small marble in a vast black sky. Stars stretched in long lines as the jump engines activated. For hours, the fleet traveled through the darkness, each ship humming with life. In the quiet of space, Ryan looked out at the stars. "Do you think they are real?" he asked Dana. Dana didn't look up. She tightened a bolt on the engine panel. "I don't know, but if they sent for humans, they must be desperate, and desperate people are worth saving." The days passed. The fleet traveled further from known space. Strange signals appeared and vanished. Energy storms danced in the void. The Thalrian signal guided them, faint and fragile but constant. The crew began to understand that this mission would not be easy. On one ship, a small Thalrian scout was found floating in a pod. The crew rescued it. Its small body was weak, its eyes large and full of fear. Elder Viral had sent it as a guide, a sign that the Thalrians were real. Julia studied the creature, who could not speak in human language but made soft chirps and glows of color. She felt a connection. Humans had a natural empathy for others. It was in their nature. Even this small alien seemed to sense that they were safe now. Alex Carter recorded every signal from the Thalrian messages. He worked late into the artificial night, translating what little they could understand. The Thalrians described their cities, their people, their art, and the destruction caused by the Dravox. It was heartbreaking. Every loss, every cry strengthened the humans' resolve. Even the crew of the fleet began to change. They were no longer just soldiers or pilots. They were guardians. They trained together, ate together, and shared stories of courage. Ryan talked about his hometown. Dana shared stories of her brother. Julia shared the lessons she had learned in war. Every story reminded them of why they fought. Weeks passed, and the fleet approached the edge of Thalrian space. Strange asteroid belts, unknown star systems, and drifting debris made the journey dangerous. But humans were used to danger. They had survived harsh planets, deadly storms, and hostile creatures. They were Deathworlders. One night, as the fleet rested near a dark nebula, Julia stood alone on the bridge. She thought of what lay ahead. The Dravox were ruthless, but humans had something the enemy could not understand: courage, ingenuity, and the will to protect those who could not fight. She looked at the stars and whispered, "We will save them. We always do." The Thalrians' SOS had been heard. Humanity had answered, and far beyond the Orion Belt, a fleet of Deathworlders prepared to bring hope to a world that had lost everything. The human fleet moved steadily through deep space. Stars stretched into lines as their jump drives carried them beyond known star systems. Every ship was alive with activity. Pilots checked weapons and engines. Engineers ran diagnostics on shields and thrusters. Scientists scanned for alien life and possible dangers. Captain Julia Monroe spent hours on the bridge of the flagship, watching the stars pass by. She knew that the Thalrians' distress signal meant danger. The Dravox were a violent species, and their forces could be waiting anywhere. Every moment of travel through unknown space was a risk. But Julia believed in her crew. Humans had survived on planets that would kill most species. She thought of the saying she had learned as a child. Survival was not about strength alone, but about courage and cleverness. Lieutenant Ryan Blake could barely sit still. This was his first mission beyond Earth's territory. Every glance at the stars filled him with excitement and fear. He had trained for years to fly in combat situations, but now he was heading into unknown territory, not for glory but to save lives. "Ryan," said Dana Brooks, tightening a panel in the engine room, "stop staring at the stars like you are dreaming. Check the fuel ratios again. We can't risk losing speed in this region." Ryan laughed lightly. "I know, Dana, but look at it. We are really out here. In real space, where no one has been before. It's amazing." Dana shook her head but smiled faintly. "Don't get distracted. We have work to do." The fleet continued its journey. They passed strange asteroid belts and glowing nebulae that twisted in green and purple light. Energy storms appeared and disappeared, forcing the ships to adjust their courses carefully. Every small hazard tested the crew's skill and teamwork. Humans were not just strong, they were smart, and they adapted quickly. One day, the fleet picked up a weak signal. Julia ordered it amplified. It was a small distress beacon from a damaged Thalrian ship. Its hull was cracked and the lights inside flickered. Smoke trailed from its engines. The humans moved quickly. Rescue shuttles were deployed, and Ryan and his squadron led the effort. They found the ship drifting near a cluster of asteroids. Inside were Thalrian civilians, families, children, and scholars, terrified and weak from lack of food and air. Elder Viral had sent them with the hope that someone would find them. Captain Monroe coordinated the rescue. Shields protected the shuttles as they approached the fragile craft. Humans lifted the Thalrians carefully, moving them into medical bays. Doctors worked tirelessly to stabilize the injured. The children clung to the humans, their glowing eyes wide with fear, and slowly began to trust the strange new beings who had come to save them. "Why are you helping us?" asked a Thalrian child softly, looking at Ryan. Ryan knelt down. "Because no one deserves to be hurt like this. We protect those who cannot protect themselves." The child nodded slowly, too young to fully understand, but sensing the truth in his words. After the rescue, the fleet continued its journey. The presence of the Thalrians made the mission even more urgent. Humans had seen firsthand the fear and helplessness of the gentle species. They could not fail. Weeks passed. During the long travel, the crew bonded. Ryan and Dana spent hours together repairing ships and sharing stories. Dana told Ryan about her brother, lost in a raid on their colony years ago. She had joined the fleet to make a difference, to protect those who could not fight. Ryan shared tales of his hometown, of small victories and simple joys. Through these conversations, their trust grew. On the bridge, Captain Monroe worked closely with Alex Carter. Alex monitored the signals from the Thalrians, translating what they could understand. The Thalrians' messages described the destruction caused by the Dravox. Cities burned, families lost, and homes destroyed. Every report strengthened the humans' resolve. Julia often reminded her crew, "We are not just soldiers. We are guardians. If we fail, these people will have no one to protect them. That is why we must succeed." The journey was not easy. Energy storms tore through the void, forcing ships to change course. Strange gravitational anomalies tried to pull the fleet off its path, but the humans were prepared. They worked together, adjusted strategies, and overcame every obstacle. Their survival skills, honed on dangerous worlds back home, gave them an edge. One night, while resting near a dark nebula, the fleet encountered a mysterious signal. It was faint, unlike anything they had seen before, and it pulsed in an irregular pattern. Alex studied the readings. "This is not the Thalrians," he said. "It could be a scout or a trap. We should proceed with caution." Julia nodded. "Keep all ships on alert. Maintain formation. No one strays alone." Ryan volunteered to investigate in a small reconnaissance ship. Dana insisted on going with him to help with any technical issues. Together, they approached the signal. What they found surprised them. Floating in the darkness was a single Thalrian scout pod. Its hull was small, cracked, and faintly glowing. Inside was a young Thalrian, unconscious but alive. Its body was weak and its breathing was shallow. Ryan carefully maneuvered the pod toward the fleet. Dana prepared the medical systems for immediate treatment. When they arrived, doctors worked quickly to stabilize the Thalrian. Slowly, the young alien began to regain consciousness. Its eyes glowed softly and it looked around, confused but alive. Captain Monroe approached. "You are safe now," she said gently. "We are here to help." The small Thalrian chirped softly, its color shifting. It could not speak in human language, but the humans understood the meaning. Trust and relief. They had found another piece of the people they were trying to save. Alex monitored the communication signals from the Thalrian pod. Even in its weakened state, it tried to send simple messages. He decoded some of the information. The Dravox had fleets larger than expected, and many Thalrian cities had already fallen. The humans realized the task ahead would not be simple. The crew of the fleet adjusted their plans. Fighters were assigned to escort rescue shuttles. Engineers reinforced shields and engines. Medical teams prepared for large-scale operations. Every human knew that the journey ahead could be dangerous, but every one of them also knew why they were there. The Thalrian presence on the ships gave the humans purpose. These aliens had never known war, yet they had survived as best they could. Humans had fought wars, storms, and deadly worlds, and they would use their experience to protect the innocent. Julia spent hours planning strategies. She worked with her officers to anticipate Dravox attacks, study enemy patterns, and coordinate the fleet. She knew that when they reached Thalros, they would be facing a brutal enemy, but she also knew humans had something that Dravox could not understand: courage, adaptability, and a will to protect. As the fleet continued its journey, The bond between humans and Thalrians grew stronger. Ryan spent time teaching the young Thalrian to operate basic controls on a fighter simulator. Dana repaired alien systems, learning quickly how they worked. Captain Monroe and Alex shared meals with Elder Voral, listening to stories of Thalros before the war. Every day, the fleet grew closer to its destination. The unknown dangers of the void tested them, but humans had faced worse at home. They were Deathworlders, survivors of harsh worlds, warriors, and protectors, and they were ready to bring hope to a civilization that had lost almost everything. Finally, after weeks of travel, the signal from Thalros grew stronger. The planet was near, and the humans could see faint signs of burning cities through their scanners. Smoke filled the atmosphere, and faint energy spikes indicated massive weapon fire. Captain Monroe stood on the bridge, staring at the screen. She knew the real challenge was about to begin. The fleet had reached the edge of Thalrian space, and beyond the smoke and fire, the Dravoks were waiting. Ryan clenched his fists. "This is it," he said. "We're here to save them," Dana nodded. "Let's make sure they survive." Julia took a deep breath. "Everyone prepare for combat and rescue operations. Remember your training. We fight to protect. We fight for life. The Dravoks will learn what it means to face humans." As the fleet moved toward Thalros, stars seemed to watch silently. The void was quiet now, but it would not stay quiet for long. Soon the humans would face the enemy, but they were ready. They were not just humans. They were Deathworlders, and they had answered the call for help. The journey through the void had strengthened them. They had saved the first Thalrians, built trust, and learned the dangers of unknown space. Now the next chapter awaited, the battle for Thalros itself, where courage and determination would be tested like never before. The human fleet emerged from the last jump point, and Thalros stretched before them. From orbit, the planet looked like it had been carved by fire. Cities glowed in flickering orange and red, smoke rising into the dark sky. The oceans were streaked with ash. Signs of battle were everywhere. The Dravoks had already begun their assault. Captain Julia Monroe stood on the bridge of the flagship. Her eyes scanned the tactical display. Enemy ships swarmed the atmosphere, blocking escape routes and preparing to attack. "All ships form defensive perimeter around Thalros," she ordered. "Fighters, be ready to engage any Dravok forces. We protect civilians first. Do not let any escapees be harmed." Lieutenant Ryan Blake's squadron launched from their carriers. The roar of engines filled the void, and plasma beams lit up the black sky. Ryan felt his heart race. This was what he had trained for, what every human had trained for, facing an enemy without fear. Beside him, Dana Brooks worked in the engine room of the flagship. She monitored shields and energy output, ready to reroute power to weapons or engines as needed. The battle would demand every skill she had. She had repaired ships in the worst conditions imaginable, but now it was for real. Lives were at stake. The first wave of Dravok fighters came into view. They were fast, sleek, and deadly, their weapons fired without warning, tearing through debris and small satellites. Ryan and his squadron dodged beams of energy, weaving through smoke and wreckage. He fired back with precision, hitting the enemy in weak spots. His fighter rocked from near misses, but he stayed focused. "Ryan, cover your six." Dana's voice came over comms. "There's a Dravok behind you." He twisted the controls sharply and shot down the enemy fighter. "Got it," he said, feeling the adrenaline surge. On the flagship, Captain Monroe coordinated attacks. She watched energy readings and enemy movements, giving orders quickly and decisively. "Fighters, flank left. Battleships, fire on the capital enemy vessel. Keep civilians safe. Shield drones to maximum." Meanwhile, shuttles carrying rescue teams descended toward the surface. Julia watched as human soldiers landed in burning cities, using shields to block falling debris and plasma fire. They carried the injured and led Thalrian civilians to safety. The humans were relentless. Even under heavy fire, they never faltered. Elder Viral and a small group of Thalrians were waiting near a central city dome. They had organized survivors as best they could, but the Dravoks were closing in. When the humans landed, the Thalrians were relieved and awed by their courage. They had never seen beings willing to risk everything for others. Ryan's squadron continued to fight in space. He led his fighters through a maze of enemy ships, taking out the smaller fighters first. He watched as a Dravok battleship fired a massive plasma beam at the city below. He called on reinforcements. "All available fighters intercept." "We cannot let them destroy the city," the human fleet responded. Battleships moved to shield the planet, absorbing the energy blasts with their reinforced shields. Carrier ships launched more fighters, creating waves of defense. Every human knew that the Thalrians' lives depended on their skill and determination. Dana adjusted the engines on one of the damaged carriers. Sparks flew as she worked, but she kept the systems running. Come on," she muttered. "Hold together. We can't lose now." On the surface, Captain Monroe led her ground team with calm precision. The Thalrians could not fight, but they could follow instructions. Humans showed them how to move safely through the burning streets, where to hide and when to run. She carried a wounded Thalrian child in her arms, placing the child in a protective carrier. Elder Voral approached her. "You're kind. We call you Deathworlders, but I never understood. Now I see. You do not fight for power. You fight for life," Julia nodded. "We fight for those who cannot fight themselves. That is all that matters." The battle intensified. Dravok ships began to focus on the humans, realizing that they were not an easy target. Ryan and his squadron performed daring maneuvers, dodging enemy fire and retaliating with precision. Several fighters were lost, but they destroyed more of the enemy in return. "Ryan, you're 6, Dana called again. "Incoming fire!" He twisted and fired, watching the Dravok craft explode into fragments. He felt the loss of his comrades, but he kept moving. Humans had learned long ago that survival depended on focus and teamwork. Above the surface, the flagship took heavy fire. Shields flickered under the intensity of the assault. Julia gave orders calmly but firmly. "Redirect power to shields. Launch drones for defense. We hold the line." The Dravok flagship appeared next. It was massive, covered in jagged armor and bristling with weapons. Its approach shook the human ships. Julia studied it carefully. Fighters target weak points on the sides. Battleships prepare for concentrated fire. We can take it down together. Ryan and his squadron engaged the flagship. It was the largest and most dangerous target they had ever faced. Plasma beams struck around them, and debris flew in all directions. But humans were fearless. They dodged, attacked, and adapted. One by one, they hit the weak points Julia had identified. On the ground, the rescue teams worked tirelessly. They carried the wounded, guided civilians through safe paths, and destroyed enemy drones with precise strikes. Every human was aware that failure was not an option. Hours passed. The Dravok flagship sustained heavy damage, but it continued to fight. Ryan's squadron had suffered losses, and he could feel the exhaustion in his arms and mind. Dana worked in the engine room, rerouting power constantly to keep fighters in the air. Then, with coordinated attacks from every ship, every fighter, and ground support, the Dravok flagship took a critical hit. Its energy core exploded in a massive flash of light. The shockwave rocked the fleet, sending debris floating in every direction. "Flagship destroyed," Ryan shouted over comms. "We did it." Julia allowed herself a moment to breathe. The immediate threat was over. The Dravok forces scattered, retreating from human firepower. The skies above Thalros were still chaotic, but for the first time in weeks, the planet felt safe. Elder Viral approached Captain Monroe. His large eyes glowed softly. "You came when no one else could. Your courage has saved our people." Julia shook her head. "It is not courage alone. It is the will to protect others even when it is dangerous. That is why humans survive." The Thalrians looked at the humans with awe and gratitude. They had seen beings willing to face death without hesitation. They had seen determination that could not be broken. In every human they saw hope, bravery, and strength. Ryan landed his fighter back on the carrier. Dana followed shortly after. Both were exhausted but proud. "We did it," Ryan said softly. Dana smiled. "Yes, but this is only the beginning. There is still work to do. The cities, the civilians, and the rest of the enemy." Julia looked out at Thalros. Smoke still rose from the cities and distant fires burned in the forests, but the human fleet had given the Thalrians a chance to rebuild, to survive, and to hope again. "Prepare for rescue operations," she ordered. "We hold this line until every civilian is safe." For hours, humans and Thalrians worked together. Civilians were transported to safe zones. Medical teams treated the wounded. Engineers repaired damaged infrastructure. Every action showed the human skill, compassion, and determination. The Thalrians began to understand the meaning of the legend. Deathworlders were not monsters of war. They were survivors, protectors, and champions of life. They had fought against impossible odds and had not faltered. As night fell on Thalros, The first waves of rescue and rebuilding were complete. Fires were still smoldering, but the planet was alive again. Thalrians walked among humans, helping carry supplies, guiding others, and learning from their protectors. Julia stood on a hill overlooking the city with Ryan and Dana. "We saved lives today," she said. "But we must remain ready. The Dravoks may return. We have shown them humans are not weak. They will remember that," Ryan nodded. "We can handle it. Humans always survive." Dana looked out at the horizon. "And we will protect them no matter what comes next." Elder Voral approached once more, placing a hand on Julia's shoulder. "Your kind has changed our world. We have hope again because of you. We will never forget this day." Julia looked at him and smiled faintly. "That is all we ever wanted. For someone to survive, to have hope, to keep living." Above them, the human fleet glowed in the dark sky, a symbol of courage and determination. The Dravoks had been defeated for now, but the lesson was clear. Humans were strong, fearless, and unyielding. The galaxy would remember the day the Deathworlders came to save Thalros. The battle for Thalros was over, but the work was only beginning. Smoke still rose from cities, fires glimmered in the forests, and broken buildings lined the streets. The Thalrians had survived, but they were exhausted and afraid. Humans moved among them, not as conquerors, but as helpers. Captain Julia Monroe walked through one of the main cities with a small team. Civilians moved carefully around them, carrying children or helping the wounded. Julia's team set up temporary shelters, distributed supplies, and coordinated medical aid. Every human was aware that their presence was as much a reassurance as it was protection. Elder Voral approached, his glowing eyes reflecting both relief and sadness. "Your people are not like anyone we have ever known," he said softly. "You came to a dying world and did not hesitate. You fought for life, not for power. You are remarkable," Julia nodded. "We fight for life because someone has to. It is not about being remarkable. It is about doing what is right." Ryan Blake walked beside Dana Brooks, carrying supplies to a shelter for children. The children clung to the humans, staring with wide eyes and soft curiosity. They had never seen beings so strong, yet so kind. One young Thalrian boy reached out and touched Ryan's arm. "Are you really here to protect us?" he asked in a soft voice. Ryan knelt down. "Yes, we are here to make sure no one hurts you. You are safe now." The boy smiled faintly, still unsure but trusting the humans. Ryan looked at Dana. "They need hope," he said. Dana nodded. "And that is why we are here." Medical teams worked around the clock. The injured Thalrians were treated with human technology, which was far more advanced than anything they had known. Doctors and nurses explained treatments, taught local helpers how to care for the wounded, and ensured that everyone could survive the coming weeks. Julia oversaw a team rebuilding the city's energy grids. Buildings were cracked, lights were out, and transportation systems were damaged. Humans worked alongside Thalrians, showing them how to repair their systems. The aliens were quick learners, but they marveled at the humans' efficiency and bravery. Elder Voral gathered a small group of Thalrian leaders. "Your people have shown us a new way," he said. "We thought we were alone. But you came. You fought. You saved lives. We will never forget this." Alex Carter, monitoring communications from the flagship, smiled at the words. He had seen the battle in space and the chaos on the ground. Humans had proven that they could face impossible odds and still protect others. The Thalrians were learning that humans were more than warriors. They were guardians. Ryan spent the next days teaching Thalrian children and young pilots how to fly simple craft. He showed them basic maneuvers, explained controls, and encouraged them to trust their instincts. One young pilot, Sira, was quick and brave. She reminded Ryan of his first days in training, eager, fearless, and determined. Dana worked with engineers to repair Thalrian ships. Their technology was strange, but she quickly adapted. She taught others to strengthen shields, repair engines, and maintain weapons for defense. The Thalrians marveled at her skill. She smiled when she saw them succeed. Captain Monroe spent hours with Elder Voral planning the city's recovery. They walked through the streets, inspecting damaged buildings and speaking with survivors. Julia noticed the subtle changes in the Thalrians. They were cautious, yes, but their eyes glimmered with hope. They began to believe that life could continue beyond the destruction. At night, the humans gathered on the hillside overlooking the city. Fires still burned in the distance, but the city was alive. Julia stood silently, reflecting on what had happened. They had faced impossible odds and emerged victorious, not because of sheer power, but because they cared. Elder Voral joined them. "Your people fight not only with weapons but with their hearts," he said. "You are different from anyone we have seen. You bring both strength and compassion. The Dravoks will remember this day." Julia nodded. "We fight to protect. That is all that matters. Life is more important than victory. If we can save lives, we succeed." Ryan looked out at the city and saw children playing near a repaired fountain. He smiled faintly. "We did more than fight," he said. "We gave them a chance to live." Dana leaned on the railing, exhausted but content. "And they will remember us. They will know that humans stand for more than themselves. We stand for everyone." Over the next weeks, the bond between humans and Thalrians grew stronger. Humans shared their knowledge, trained Thalrian forces for self-defense, and helped establish communication networks across the planet. The Thalrians, once passive and fearful, began to believe in their own strength. Young Thalrian pilots trained daily with Ryan. Engineers worked under Dana's guidance. Leaders discussed strategies with Julia and Alex. Together, humans and Thalrians began to rebuild not only their cities, but their confidence and courage. During one training session, Sira, the young pilot, asked Ryan, "Will humans always come to help us?" Ryan smiled gently. "We always try to help those in need. That is what humans do. If you are in danger, we will come, but we hope you will be able to protect yourselves too. That is the real strength." Dana repaired a Thalrian cruiser alongside local engineers. "You have to understand," she said. "Courage is important, but skill is even more important. You can fight with heart, but you also need your mind." Elder Voral observed the humans closely. He had never seen beings so resilient. They were born on a harsh planet, and their experiences had shaped them. Humans survived where others would have failed. They fought for life, for others, and for hope. One evening, a message arrived from the outer systems. Another SOS had been detected. A distant world had been attacked, and the inhabitants were in danger. Julia gathered her officers. "The battle here is over, but the work is not done. The Thalrians are safe for now, but others need help. Humanity cannot ignore a call for help." Alex nodded. "We have the fleet ready. We can respond quickly." Elder Voral approached. "Your kind does not wait. You act when others cry for help. That is why we trust you." Julia placed a hand on his shoulder. "We do not act for glory. We act because it is right. Life is worth protecting no matter the cost." The Thalrians began to prepare. They learned to trust humans, to work alongside them, and to understand the importance of courage and skill. Children who had hidden in fear now played in open streets. Adults who had been hopeless now contributed to rebuilding. Humans had not only saved lives, but had inspired a new way of thinking. Ryan trained with Sira late into the night. "You have potential," he told her. "But courage alone will not win battles. You must think, plan, and act together with others. That is what makes humans strong." Sira nodded, understanding the lesson. She had watched humans fight and protect others. Their determination was more than strength. It was intelligence, teamwork, and heart. Dana continued to teach engineers how to repair and strengthen ships. She showed them how to anticipate damage and prevent failures before they happened. "Humans survive because we prepare for the worst," she said. "You must do the same." As weeks passed, the humans and Thalrians formed a true bond. They shared meals, stories, and knowledge. They laughed together and mourned together. They worked together, learning from one another and growing stronger. Julia watched the city one morning. The streets were cleaner, the children laughed, and the air smelled of flowers and fresh water. The Thalrians were learning to live again. Humanity had given them more than protection. They had given hope. Elder Voral approached Julia. "Your people are not only warriors," he said. "You are teachers, healers, and friends. We will never forget your kindness. The galaxy will remember the day Deathworlders came to save us." Julia smiled faintly. "We do not act for recognition. We act because it is right. That is all that matters." At night, the humans gathered on the hillside overlooking the city. Fires burned in the distance, but the city was alive and safe. Ryan, Dana, Julia, and Alex sat quietly, reflecting on the weeks of work and battle. Ryan spoke softly. "We have made a difference. We saved lives, and we showed them courage exists in everyone." Dana nodded. "And they will pass it on. Humans do not just protect. We inspire." Julia looked at the stars. "There will be more battles, more cries for help. But for now, Thalros is safe. We have done our job and we will continue to protect those in need wherever they are. The bond between humans and Thalrians had been forged in fire and courage. Together they had faced death and destruction and had survived. Together they would face the future. Thalros was healing. The fires had burned out and the smoke had cleared. The streets were alive with people and the once broken cities were beginning to shine again. Gardens were replanted, streets cleaned, and small markets reopened. Humans and Thalrians worked side by side. The bond between the two species was strong, built on shared struggle, trust, and courage. Captain Julia Monroe walked through a rebuilt district with Ryan Blake and Dana Brooks. Children ran around them, playing games the humans had taught. Elder Viral walked beside them, quietly observing the changes. The city was still recovering, but hope had returned. "Your people have done more than we could imagine," Elder Viral said. "You did not just save lives, you saved our spirit." Julia shook her head. "We only did what anyone should do. Life is worth protecting. That is why humans fight, no matter the danger." Ryan smiled as he watched a small Thalrian girl imitate him flying a simulator. "They are learning fast," he said. "Soon they won't need us to teach them everything." Dana nodded. "It is amazing. They will grow stronger. And when the Dravoks come back here, and they will, these people will be ready." For weeks, humans had stayed on Thalros helping rebuild, train, and guide. They had taught the Thalrians not only how to survive, but how to protect themselves. Engineers had repaired weapons and shields, pilots had learned maneuvers, and citizens had learned emergency plans. The planet, once on the brink of destruction, now had hope. Captain Monroe gathered her officers on the flagship for a meeting. "We have done everything we can here," she said. "The Thalrians are safe for now. But our sensors detect something unusual. A signal from a distant system. Another SOS. It is faint but clear. Someone needs our help." Alex Carter studied the readings. "It is far beyond Thalros. Another species is under attack. The message is weak, but it is urgent. They are asking for humans." Julia's eyes narrowed. "It seems the galaxy is filled with danger and we are being called again. We cannot ignore it." Ryan leaned forward. "Do we know what species it is?" "No," Julia said. "But we know what it means. Someone is in danger and humans are the only ones who can help." Dana nodded. "Then we go. We always answer the call." Elder Voral approached the group. "Your people are different. You do not seek power. You act for life itself. We will help you prepare. Our ships can support your fleet and our pilots will fight alongside yours." Julia smiled faintly. "Then together we will face this next threat. Humans do not fight alone, but we fight for those who cannot fight for themselves." The fleet prepared to leave. Human ships were fueled and repaired, and Thalrian allies joined them with supplies, fighters, and guidance. The bond between the two species was clear. They had faced death together, survived, and formed trust that could not be broken. Ryan trained Sira and other Thalrian pilots one last time. "Remember your maneuvers. Work together. Stay calm under pressure. That is how we survive," Sira nodded. "We will not forget. Humans taught us courage and skill. We will protect our world and others." Dana checked the engines one last time. "Everything is stable. We are ready for whatever comes next." Julia stood on the bridge of the flagship watching the stars ahead. "Prepare for jump," she ordered. "We answer every call. We protect those in need. That is what humans do." The fleet jumped through the gate into unknown space. The stars stretched into lines as they traveled faster than light. There was silence in the void, but the humans were ready. They had faced death on Thalros and had survived. They had built trust, courage, and skill. Nothing could stop them when they acted together. After days of travel, the distant system came into view. Smoke and energy readings showed signs of attack. Planets glowed faintly with fires and explosions. The SOS was real. A civilization under threat, desperate for help. Julia gathered her officers. "This is what we trained for. This is why we survive. We will protect them no matter the cost." Ryan's squadron launched from the carriers, engines blazing. They weaved through debris and enemy fire, following the patterns Julia had studied. Dana monitored shields and engines, rerouting power as needed. Every human aboard knew their role and acted without hesitation. As they approached the planet, they saw the attackers, a warlike species similar to the Dravoks, fast and aggressive. But humans had learned. They adapted, anticipating movements, using skill, teamwork, and intelligence to face danger head-on. Captain Monroe coordinated attacks. Fighters protect civilians. Battleships concentrate fire on enemy warships. Everyone worked together. We save lives first. Victory comes second. The battle began. Lasers and plasma beams lit up the void. Ships twisted and turned to avoid destruction. Humans fought with courage, not recklessness. Every move was calculated, every attack precise. Ryan led his squadron with skill, taking down enemy ships while protecting Thalrian allies. Dana worked tirelessly in the engine room, repairing damage as it occurred. Sparks flew, alarms blared, but she stayed calm. Humans survived because they never panicked, never gave up, and always adapted. The enemy underestimated them. They had expected fear, hesitation, and retreat. Instead, they faced determination, skill, and unwavering courage. Humans did not fight for glory. They fought to protect life. That was something no enemy could understand or predict. On the surface, Julia directed rescue teams. Civilians were transported from burning cities, buildings stabilized with shields, and the injured treated with human technology. Thalrian allies guided survivors to safety. Every life saved strengthened the humans' resolve. Hours passed. Ships were lost, but more were ready to take their place. Humans adapted to every new threat. Their teamwork, courage, and intelligence turned the tide of the battle. The enemy could not withstand the combination of skill and determination. Finally, with a coordinated strike, the enemy flagship exploded in a massive blast. Shockwaves tore through the remaining attackers. Many fled, retreating into space. The SOS civilization had been saved. Captain Monroe allowed herself a moment to breathe. "The planet is secure," she said. "Civilians are safe. Damage is controlled. We have done our job." Ryan landed back on the carrier, exhausted but proud. "We saved them," he said quietly. Dana leaned against the console. "Yes, and they will survive because of us. Humans do not just fight, and we protect, teach, and inspire." Julia looked at the stars. "We will continue to answer calls for help. That is what humans do. That is why we survive." Elder Voral's voice came through comms, calm and filled with respect. "Your people are not just warriors. You are guardians. Wherever there is danger, life will call and humans will answer. We will stand with you whenever needed." The fleet began to return to Thalros, carrying survivors and supplies. Humans and Thalrians shared stories, laughter, and relief. The bond between the species had grown stronger. Together they had faced death and survived. Together they would face whatever dangers the galaxy had next. As the fleet left the distant system, Ryan looked at Julia. "Do you think there will always be more SOS signals?" he asked. Julia smiled faintly. "Yes, but humans will answer them. We fight for life. We protect those who cannot protect themselves. That is who we are. That is why the galaxy calls us," Dana nodded. "And we will continue no matter the cost." Elder Voral added, "Your people have changed the galaxy. Where there was fear, you bring courage. Where there was despair, you bring hope. Humans are called Deathworlders, but you are the ones who give life." Julia looked at the stars ahead. "Then we will continue. Every signal we receive, every life we can save, Mer. That is our mission. That is humanity." The human fleet moved forward, engines glowing against the dark sky. Across alien worlds, people whispered of the Deathworlders, beings who came not to conquer but to protect. Life itself had a new guardian in the galaxy, and the legend of humanity spread further than anyone could imagine. Somewhere in the void, new dangers waited. But every enemy who faced humans would learn the same truth. The Deathworlders came for those in need, and nothing could stop them. The galaxy had found its protectors, and humanity would answer every call as long as life existed to defend.